Addison. Welcome back to This is Horror.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So, the last time that we were talking, we spoke about your first experiences with story. But this time, I want to go back even further because I want to know what were some of the early life lessons that you learned growing up?
Whoa. Oh my. That's so funny. I'll do one. I remember this specifically because it haunts me. So in fifth grade, I got the lead role of the musical Guys and Dolls. Well, not the lead, Nathan Detroit, the guy, the other lead. And it was a big deal because it was a K through 8 school, and so a fifth grader got it, and I was like feeling like really, really into myself. But so that's where kind of the end of the story hits. But cut to fourth grade, and I have like a group of guy friends who love to rag on each other, and I was like, okay, this is fun. But they always seem to be bragging on me, and it was a Catholic school, and everybody was saying gay then as a way to insult people. And I remember this one day I was out in the playground, and everybody decided to play a trick on me. We were playing tag, and they're like, instead of tagging him, just like full force, just drop kick him in the ass. And I was like, and I didn't know this, so we're going around tagging, and then all of a sudden I just get a full fucking hit in the ass. And I was like, that hurt. And then they kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And then I started crying. And then all those motherfuckers got sent to the principal's office. And then come the rest of the school year, they decided to ostracize me and make sure that none of the kids would play with me during recess. And so I would hide, and I'm okay now. This sounds like really traumatic, but I was 11 and we can move on. But like I was just like ostracized, and the teachers starting to notice, till one day they started playing with me again because the teachers forced them to. And they didn't want to, and then they just kept going for me to make sure I was it. And I was kind of a little like slow and not that athletic. Yeah, and then I just was like, no, I'm not going to do this again. Then cut to fifth grade, I'm the lead of the musical, and for some reason we really like theater in there, so all my friends were also with me too, and they just decided to be friends with me again like nothing happened. And I was just like, okay, cool. And I did it that year because I had no other choice, because I had no friends, and we just like existed like nothing had happened. And then I was like, I never will be friends with these people again. And I left the Catholic school, and I went to public school. I think the lesson there is that, like, there are certain things that like we kind of accept with friends, that we especially when we've had them for a long time, and the forgiveness like of it, or really just kind of the like pushing it down and the placating of it, like really leads to this like nasty friendship. That, I guess I'm connecting this to Touch Me. This is crazy. I like really didn't think that was going to happen, but we found our way in. Kind of like this idea that like friends, just because they've been your friends, like doesn't mean that they will be your friends forever. Two, they're good for you. And the continuation of proximity to friendship like is really real, especially when you're younger, and then sometimes when you're older, as like you stay in the same city, or like even when you first move to a city and you find these friends, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, this doesn't have to happen. And it's not like you have to be like all like TikTok therapy about it, being like, you're not serving me. It's just like sometimes friendships fall away, and you kind of realize who we people are, and that's okay too. And also you're probably at fault, although I don't think I was at fault in fourth grade. I was kind of like a loser kid who just like Pokemon and N64. But it is one of those things where it's like, sometimes friends aren't your friends, and sometimes friends aren't meant to be there forever, and both are okay. And then when I grew up and started experiencing friendship breakups, I was like, you're probably at fault too. But the biggest thing that I've found that leads to the deterioration of relationships is just the lack of communication, because people don't want to have hard conversations, especially in the friendship arena, because they feel like they don't need to, because you don't see them as much. But that just leads to resentment, and then it leads to a blow up, and then it leads to a breakup, or that could have been solved if you had just talked. Um, which essentially is kind of what Touch Me, how kind of originated Touch Me and what I was exploring in the movie. So there, full circle.
Yeah, I thought to begin with, we'd probably talk a little bit about your previous movie,
Yeah,
Hypochondriac,
sure.
but
Absolutely.
but you've linked it so well to Touch Me that we're gonna have to kind of reverse, like in some bizarre kind of
Well, like,
rewind.
yeah. I mean, Hypochondriac and Touch Me are connected, maybe not obviously stylistically, but they're definitely connected kind of in my own mental health journey. So, like, they definitely speak to each other a lot. So we can even go back and forth, whatever you want.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, you mentioned about the connection, and I think that they're almost both part of the same piece, but you've got
Mm,
Hypochondriac is the super pitch black dark
yeah.
version, and then
Hmm.
Touch Me has a little bit more playfulness and lightness to it, which is, of course, not to say there aren't jokes and there's not humor in
Right.
Hypochondriac. I mean, for goodness sake, there's a Donnie Darko massive wolf throughout the
Yeah.
whole thing, and
I
you've
mean,
got a
yeah.
Homeward Bound reference.
Yeah, not only that, but like the funniest scene for me in Hypochondriac is when they're making pottery together, and there's the ghost sequence. Like people were like, "Oh, I laughed at that." I'm like, "Yeah, that was intentional. It's ridiculous. Like he's making pottery with his inner child as he's like dressed as a Donnie Darko wolf." So,
Yeah, no,
um,
I wanted to talk about that. I mean, at what point? So we are going into hypochondriac. This is going
yeah,
to be all
yeah,
over the place, but
we found our way back in, right? You know, I'm
yeah.
just like, yeah, we can start touching me, but then all of a sudden, hey, we brought back to the first. So.
That's it. And at what moment did you know you were going to recreate the famous pottery scene from Ghost? I mean, what was that kind of part of the reason as to why you made Will a potter to begin with? Was it
Yeah,
to get that scene in?
I wish I could say, like, like now that I made that movie. Well, we filmed that movie 5 years ago, which is crazy. But um, the answer it's always dumb because the answer is no. But like it's because usually when I do things like I find them that I find funny, I put them in and then kind of try to connect them later. But the real reason Will was a Potter is because no one wants to originally. So in the original draft of Hypochondriac was written in the throes of my mental breakdown as I was recovering and getting functioning of my arms back. I decided to do just like a very like shot for shot, word for word, exactly what happened to me, which made it a very messy and unmakeable film because it was about my mother. It was about a friend who died. It was about him thinking he had Lou Gehrig's disease. It was about the American medical care system. It was about like moving to a new city and then having something go wrong and losing all of your friends because you're not good enough friends for them to care for you. Like it was just like all these things that I was kind of experiencing at the time. And in the movie, he was just a writer, and that's like boring. No one wants that. So I basically, a buddy of mine was like, "Hey, like you shouldn't be this." And I was like, obviously, it was just kind of but what I really like about art and pottering or however you is that like I lost functioning of my arms for 6 months after an injury at work with a really terrible boss who was making me do things above my pay grade. And so I was like, what is the most devastating art form that like if you lost functioning of your arms, that just happened to me, a potter, and so I watched a lot of the like I can't remember the show now, but the British Bake Off, but for pottery. Like there was very specifically that show, and I learned about it, and I was like, oh yeah, this is exactly right. And I was able to like create kind of the not the metaphor, but like the real version it actually led itself really well to the world of high concept or high price pottery because they do have a lot in common in a way. And then I was like, well, now we get to do the ghost sequence. So now that I was like, so Potter came first, and I was like, well, clearly we have to have a pottery sequence in which he makes pottery with his man in a wolf costume, and then we can have his throat slit and be like this insanity type scene. And I was really proud of that scene. so yeah.
No, you absolutely should be. And, it's so kind of shot for shot Ghost that
Yeah.
anyone who's familiar with ghosts, which should be everyone really, they
Yeah.
know exactly what
Yeah.
you're doing from the
Well,
off.
that like, even in the modern sense, it's been memed to death, like, there's been
Right.
so many videos, it's like, we know that scene.
And so, I mean, for people who aren't familiar with hypochondriac, I suppose
Yeah.
we should start with giving them the elevator pitch.
Oh, sure. Honestly, it's been so long since I have said the actual outline or the log line, but the way I describe it is just a gay horror movie about my mental breakdown. That's really what it is. A guy whose mother almost kills him in a psychosis when he was a kid, cuts to 18 years later, and he starts exhibiting symptoms of both mental illness and physical illness. And as he goes down into the spiral that is psychosis, he tries to solve it himself while hiding it from everyone else. And as he gets down into the darkness, he starts being visited by a man in a wolf costume who's haunting his dreams and his reality.
That is a succinct and very accurate way of putting it. And I mean, you mentioned that you lost full function of your arms for
Yeah,
6 months after a
yeah,
workplace injury.
yeah.
I'm not sure if you've ever given the kind of graphic tell all version as to what actually happened. So,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so essentially, the place that I was working at, which I won't name, but I was working as a production assistant, just a PA, on commercial sets, and they paid us like over market rate. So I was just like, wow, this is great. But I had a really terrible boss who was nice, but one of those people that like made you do things that were clearly not in your job description. Like, as a production assistant on set, I wasn't supposed to like drive away and get her vitamin B12 or pick up her laundry or do any of these things. Like, once in a while as a favor, it's just like, yeah, no problem. Like, I'm on the clock, and honestly, like, I get paid for when I drive, so not a big deal. But what they actually started doing was deliberately not hire people that were way more expensive to pay daily, and started using me as that job. So, for example, like for what's called prep and wrap before and after a shoot, you have what's called, a grip, or anybody in the G&E team who handle the lights and the equipment that use the lights have to lift and use all these really, really heavy everything, like anywhere from like C stands to like what are called RE Sky panels that look like giant widescreen TVs that are like 90 to 100 pounds, huge metal bars, like all these things. And they had them in the studio, but the only way you can get them upstairs was to walk them upstairs. And usually you have like 3-4 people in the setup using freight elevators and things to lift, and I had none of that, and I was the only one doing the work. And there was even somebody whose job it was to help everybody there, who decided he just wanted to make music by himself in the corner and just tell me where things go. So overall, I was just like, I was dealing with like a culture of like of being underpaid, not being unionized, and not really understanding that this was a bad thing. And also, while this was happening, I won't just be like, this job was the reason everything happened, but I also, my mother is bipolar, and she's been bipolar since I was 12. I mean, she's been bipolar probably her whole life, but it really started manifesting when I was 12 years old. And she's been through episode after episode after episode, specifically manic episodes, in which she gets very paranoid the longer she goes off of her medication. And what she does for me is she starts leaving these like kind of mentally abusive voicemails that run the gamut of like of everything that really fuck with your brain. So it's like, my best friend at the time, she told me that I shouldn't trust, but wouldn't give me a reason. And these were voicemails. And then you would call and you would ask, and she would never remember why. Like, she was obsessed with like thinking like when I was a kid that there would be a bomb in the pool heater, or like somebody was going to blow up the school, so she would pull my sisters out of school. She thinks the CIA is after her, and therefore they're trying to use me to get to her. Like, like pick pick a like psychotic thought, and like she had them over the course of the like 20 years that like we experienced it. Also, and to be clear, it's like my mother is not a bad person. It's like literally Jekyll and Hyde. Hyde takes over her body, and she's just kind of like taken over almost like a marionette, and like says all these things. And when she's lucid, she's a very lovely mother. But the problem is when my mother are separated, like my mother was left alone. And the worst of it happened like during the pandemic, which I guess is like right around the time I was going to make this movie, or like rewriting this movie. And so I took legitimate copies, like direct to text voicemails of my mother, and the voicemails that you listen to in the movie are my mom's actual words. And so that was happening, and I started exhibiting these symptoms of just like nausea and dizziness, and I started googling my symptoms, and I was convinced that like, you know, and then of course the thing about the algorithm is once you click on one disease, it just starts to like kind of center you towards there. So my brain decided to hyper focus on ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, where, you know, you just slowly have your body fail you and your muscles like shut down until you eventually can't breathe and then you die. So I was like, I probably have this, but I'm also trying to prove to myself that I don't. So if I wasn't trying to prove myself, I probably would have spoken up to my boss and be like, hey, you kind of are taking advantage of me. You're having no one here and I'm getting paid like $200, $250 for 12 hours. And I'm lifting all these heavy equipment up and down stairs, like with no help and no freight elevator, no nothing. So I'm doing all these things, and I'm, you know, not exactly at the time the fittest guy. You know, I have a good metabolism, but like I just like, you know, I wasn't the type that could just rip through these things. And I just, you know, one day I was lifting like a 90-pound light, and I felt something pull in both of my arms, and then slowly but surely I started to lose function. And it got so bad to the point where I was supposed to work for them again, and I was in so much pain and could like barely lift food with a fork that I had to be like, hey, I can't do this anymore. And I didn't really give a reason. I just said I can't. And by this point, I'm convinced I have ALS. I've been to a lot of doctors, like kind of funneling through my insurance and realizing that like most doctors in Los Angeles don't even take anything from Obamacare. Not to like get into like the failures and the functionality of the failing American healthcare system, but it is what it is, you know. And so it got so bad that my roommate was like, Addison, I think you need to go home. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right. And my arms were not getting better, and I was convinced I was dying. I was having panic attacks left and right. And then I went home to my dad, my like completely no understanding of mental illness father, who's grown now, but at the time it was like an incredibly useless and unhelpful month. As thank God I had a therapist who was like, I'm talking to you every day, you really need help, and which prevented me from going in the hospital. And I got on antidepressants, and I was on a shit ton of Xanax, and then I went to see my dad's doctor, who again didn't really give me a straight answer on what was happening. You know, I'd wake up in the middle of the night because I convinced myself that I couldn't focus on my breathing, that I would stop breathing. And when you do that, you have these like gasps of like feeling like you're drowning. You know, when I was watching movies, like, you know, I would just shoot into panic attacks where my entire body would just feel like it was hot and like lasers were shooting up my body. While I was watching Tom Cruise's The Mummy. And like, you know, it was just like, it's just like a ridiculous, like, you know, landscape of amalgamation of bullshit. And so after a month, like I fixed my brain a little bit. My body was still broken because I was like, it was that stupid thing where it's like, you're like, don't use your arms. And I'm like, well, if I don't use my arms, like I can't drive, like I can't type, I can't do any of these things. You have to use them a little. But, you know, I got there and I couldn't stand my dad anymore. I love him now. This is not like a shading on my dad. He told me I got one movie to make about him, so we're all good. But like so I went back, and this is like, you're taking me down memory lane. And so my friend was like, why don't you see a massage therapist? And I did. And he massaged it so bad that I re-injured them even further, and I got even more hurt. So I stayed on the couch for 4 weeks. I finally got a prescription for physical therapy, but I had to wait until the swelling had gone down, and I decided to stop moving, which was the dumbest thing I could have done, because you can't just stop moving if you have an injury. You can rest it for a few days, but I just stopped moving. And I was on the couch for 12 hours. So everything seized up. So by the time I got to physical therapy, I was in so much pain at that it took like 3 months before I was finally able to regain full function. And a lot of that was finally basically be them being like, you just have to do functional movement even if it hurts. And I was like, okay. And that started getting back. But while that was happening, I was going through intense symptoms of like brain fog and panic and all this stuff that came rushing back. So I finally was able to see a neurologist who gave me an MRI of my brain. And then the MRI came back clean. And then all my symptoms went away. So the thesis, I guess, behind the movie Hypochondriac is you'd be shocked how the mind can affect the body, because it literally does, and it happens all the time. At the time, I had undiagnosed obsessive compulsive disorder, and if I had known that, that probably would have helped, because like my OCD that I was hyper focusing on was dying of Lou Gehrig's disease, and it doesn't help. It's like this was before AI, right? So I couldn't go to a chat bot and being like, "I'm dying, I'm dying, I'm dying," and at least with that, like at ChatGPT, they'll be like, "No, you're not." At least they could be like, no, which makes it a little more, I don't know. But like at the time I was just like looking at Google, and then at one point I was like looking at fucking message boards about preparing for the end of life for like people with MS or ALS. And I was like, what are we doing? So anyway, once I got the MRI, everything went away, and I also at the time was writing the very original script that was Hypochondriac that became the version that is now. So over the collection of like whatever it was, 6 months. I say it's 6 months because like when I injured myself, but it was like getting bad like about a month before, because right then I'd also visited my mother and stayed with her for three days, and like had to just listen to all these like conspiracy theories about how I shouldn't trust anybody, and that like I'm a terrible person, like all this stuff. And so yeah, that's the story, and that's what everything Hypochondriac is based off of.
Oh my goodness. I mean, what a
Uh,
thing to live through. And I mean, thank goodness you did live through it, because for some
Yes.
people, that might be the end right there. And
Yeah, no, I mean, I know, and like I talk about this a lot more so now that I like know I have obsessive compulsive disorder, and I've gone through a lot of OCD therapy. It's called exposure and response prevention therapy. But like people with OCD have some of the highest suicide rates amongst like the neurodivergent disorders and stuff. And so like there's definitely, I mean, there's like I never because in the movie there's a pretty really dark moment where Will almost like slits the wrist, and he's with his wrists, and he's with the wolf. And there's that moment where you like sit there and you're like, and that's the thing, it's like the whole movie for me, because it ends positively, spoiler alert, but like sometimes you have to tell people that when you're like, you're gonna go down this rabbit hole, but you're gonna come out the other side, because that was like the whole point of that movie for me. Was it's like, it's not about like failing because you're going through something hard, and like that's the message of mental illness. It's like, no, it's just really fucking hard, and we're sorry that it's hard. I'm sorry that it's hard. But like, if you are willing to put in the work, and it's real work, because it's not fun, it's not painless, it's real and honest fucking work with therapy and like journaling and accepting the fact that your illness is going to handicap you for a bit. But if you can do the work and push through it, you will come out the other side a person who is capable of immense empathy. And also, like, you will have the tools that allow you to move forward, not necessarily in the perfect way, but a way that's manageable. And that was like my whole point with that movie, because by the time we got to filmmaking, I was through it. And like, I couldn't tell a movie about me where like, I think some people like, it's funny because it's like so long ago now, like none of any critique of it just bounces off me. But a lot of people were like, I hate the fact that it was all in his head. I hate the fact that no one died and there weren't real consequences to his mental illness. And I'm just like, that's not the point. This is like in my attempt to recreate a factual way of what it's like to live with something like this, live with something where you think you're dying the whole time, and you're not going to kill someone. I mean, you might. I mean, that's like a very like like the deep darkest thing, but like really like people with schizophrenia and bipolar are not as violent as media kind of claims that they are to other people. And so it's not about that, but like the war in your head is scarier because you're fighting demons that no one can see, and the only person that's at risk of dying is you. And that to me was kind of like the whole thesis and the whole exploration of that film.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I
that's one
mean,
of the things that we learned when I was in college. I have a
Mm-hmm.
bachelor's science degree in psychology. We went through, 3 semesters of abnormal psychology, and it's like the final semester, they're like, "Hey, the thing you have to realize is when people are sick and they say, "Hey, do I want to, am I ever going to be better?" They're thinking that they're going to get cured,
Yeah.
and you're not going to get cured. You're going to get better, but better doesn't mean cured. Better means that, like we said, you learn how to manage it, and you learn how to not necessarily control it, but
Mm-hmm.
live with it.
Yeah.
And I think that's important because a lot of people think, well, this is the only thing that's wrong with me. And it's like, no, there's probably a lot of things wrong with everyone.
Yeah.
We have to learn how to cope with things. And
Yeah.
that's the toughest journey in the fucking world.
Yeah. I it is so unbelievably painful, especially when you're in it, because you can't see the light. And that's like you just can't. You're stuck there and you're at the bottom of the pool and the light's not shining. It is just darkness and you feel like you're drowning. And I will say the really wonderful thing about making art about this is the ability to foster community through the act of collective, like, consumption. So it's like going at the most gratifying parts of touring with Hypochondriac on the film festival scene, and then doing like my release and going to a few cities and doing talkbacks and talking with press and doing podcasts, is that like you find a lot of people who have gone through bizarrely hyper specifically same experiences as you. Like obviously that's like, well, everybody suffers from anxiety, or a lot of people suffer from like medical psychosis and all this kind of stuff. But then I started finding people who are like, I lost functioning of my arms for 6 months very specifically and couldn't get out of it, or like, because it's like, and also this is the idea, like I've done, or especially like in like the disability community, it's just like it is one of those things where it's like you become like invisible because no one wants to acknowledge that you are this close from having some part of your body shutting down. And so it's easier to ignore an entire subsection of people than face it and accept it because for some reason, like, I guess ignorance is bliss. And that could be, for a lot of the world, that kind of is. But in reality, like, to take it a step further, if you just acknowledged like everybody's kind of issues that they're having and worked with each other to foster a sense of community and support. So when something does happen again, you are not shunned, but rather accepted. And you have done the work to where, let's say, gone are the days of having a mental breakdown for 6 months to a year, but maybe it gets to the point where you take a couple days and you come out and you're through the other side because you have the tools already given to you. And so it was really lovely talking to other people and like, realizing that like the movie like spoke to them, because like art speaks to me. That's how I become an artist. Like I don't think like we're changing the world like, like certain other jobs I think like do more of, but like art does have a profound sense of telling stories about people's other perspectives that we don't experience on a day to day, and could foster a sense of empathy that like truly changes people's minds. I go back to the second season of Glee, which is so funny to say like Glee changed the world, but like at the time like America was really wrestling with the idea of like making gay marriage legal. And here's a show on primetime network television that had a really honest and specific gay bullying storyline that most people who were watching it had never seen in real life. And it spoke to people. And then more media started coming out that was talking about the experiences, and it kind of shifted the landscape of people's opinions on these things. And so, like, that's why I always want to tell stories that, like, especially in the genre space, because I think in the genre space you have a easier way to speak to people, because you're also like scaring them or making them laugh, or like talking about it through the side. And that's always what I want to do with my art. That's like, I guess, my calling or my purpose, as it were.
Yeah, do you think in kind of communicating these messages through genre and through horror, you can actually be more honest and more authentic than if it were to be, a non-genre story?
I think, like, I don't want to say it's easier or better. I just say, like, it's different. And I feel like, like, I was like trying to find an example, like Hamnet, for example, which is like dealing with the grief, but is very much a drama. And if somebody who like is maybe at the start of their journey about dealing with the profound grief of someone may not want to watch a movie about the death of a child right off the bat. So it's like, but like, and maybe you will, but like, it's more of like, you potentially have the sense to like work yourself up if you're not ready for something like that. But I think it's why, for example, something like stand-up comedy could like lead to healing as well, because there is a certain subsection of like things of like, well, like, you're talking about only someone who's been through the death of a child can stand up and do a stand-up comedy routine about it, and then that makes you feel seen in that kind of sense. So that's what I kind of feel like with horror, right? Is it's like it might be an easier, more palatable thing to kind of get people into seats or to watch them. It doesn't mean that the journey isn't necessarily any less any less kind of affecting. In fact, sometimes it can be more so, just with the fact that we're going larger than life. But actually, this kind of connects to hypochondria, or to touch me now that I'm talking about it, because in a way, it's a form of exposure therapy, watching horror, because and it's like of a lesser one than watching, let's say, Hamnet, if you're going through the death of a child, because going through like the grieving process. Because in exposure and response prevention therapy for OCD, you're supposed to, or one kind of thing that you can do is like write about the worst fear that you have through a like completely fantastical and hilarious way. So it's like, for like, I use a couple examples of like thinking my boyfriend is going to break up with me, and then my life is going to be ruined because all his friends are going to leave me since they are my only friends, and my other friends who are on my side were like, oh, like, you didn't want to be friends with us before, so we're not going to be friends with you now. So I'm going to have no friends, and then all my collaborators are going to leave, and then I'm going to be alone in my house. I'm going to lose my house because I can't get a job because none of my friends or collaborators want to work with me anymore, and so I'm going to have to sell the house, and then no one's going to want me to go back home. I can't start over. So I'm going to take a knife. I'm going to slit my wrists and I'm going to die. Like, that is how far you go when you have obsessive compulsive disorder. You go so far down the rabbit hole. So in an attempt to prevent that, you write stories like kind of exposing yourself to what your boyfriend could say that hits you the hardest. But in the background, unicorns are fully having an orgy, and they're coming oodles and oodles of just icing with sprinkles. And so every time your boyfriend is telling you what a piece of shit you are, or very specific terrible things you view about yourself, like, you get shot with like icing and sprinkles, which is just unicorn cum. And so you start, I know this is ridiculous, but you start kind of shifting your perspective on it, because what OCD is, which is not what OCD is like the thoughts you have are antithetical to reality. There's a difference of like being like there are people who really want to murder people, and then there's somebody who is OCD who's afraid of murdering someone, even though they would never in their mind murder someone. And so yeah, that's what you do. Is so, and in a way, that's kind of how I view what horror and genre and science fiction that's about things are essentially are. They're little exposure therapies for people that like may or may not be dealing with something hard. And so if they watch that movie, it's easier for them to kind of like take that on without being so incredibly anxiety ridden, because the roller coaster is fun. And while it may be about something serious, it's still fun. And so you connect kind of like your terrible memories to like this cathartic release of something that you were holding on to for so long. And it allows you to grieve, and it allows you to accept, and it allows you to move forward. And that's what I think art does, right? And so that's kind of long-winded answer to say that, like, that's why I think horror is is profound, has a profound sense of a way to speak to people that may not be ready or prepared for something that directly deals with something in a very straightforward way.
Yeah, so I was going to ask what tools you have for dealing with, when you find like an OCD episode
Yeah.
is coming on, and it sounds like obviously exposure therapy is one of the best
Yeah.
tools in that kit. Are there other things that you kind of use?
Sure. I mean, it all kind of ties around exposure therapy. What I just talked about is like one example of how you do it. So another example would be I do these things called loop tapes, where you basically write like a short little blurb of all of the fears that you have, like um, like maybe like say you're afraid of driving across a bridge, and because you're afraid the bridge is going to collapse and you just can't. So you're like, all right, you start with being like, I may or may not, like, the bridge may or may not collapse while I am driving over the bridge. I may or may not be forced to drive across the bridge because I'm in a city in which there is no connections to anywhere else but a bridge. I will get in front of the bridge, and because of me, the bridge may or may not collapse, killing thousands of people and immediately causing myself to hit my head and go unconscious, and I may or may not wake up wake up in under the water, and the glass may or may not break as the water slowly fills up in the car, and my seatbelt may or may not become undone as the water slowly fills as my lungs, and I suffocate and I die. And the very distinct, and I'm not a therapist, so like this is just like specifically what works for me. I advise you, if you think you have obsessive compulsive disorder, to seek out a professional who does ERP therapy. But so this is what I do: is like I record myself. Like, that's not my exact fear, because I'm not so comfortable that I'm going to tell you, because they're so viciously terrible, right? They're so antithetical to who you are, like the worst kinds of things. It really scares people, because when you first have these intrusive thoughts, you think that because you thought this, you're this person, right? And so it's very reassuring in a way that, even though OCD is like literally, reassurance is the devil of OCD, because you'll never be able to 100% be sure of anything. So it's trying to be comfortable in the uncertainty. So what I said when I was talking about that may or may not loop tape, you have to keep saying this may or may not happen, because you're never 100% sure. And when you're listening to it, they have what's called a SUD scale. It's just like a 1 through 10 scale of like something that makes you anxious. Generally, for me, that makes me incredibly anxious, because I start imagining exactly my truth. And so I would listen to that and will my anxiety into existence. And then I would just sit there and listen to it, tell myself this may or may not happen, and don't engage in what's called reassurance practices, which are, for me, let's say, like, I think someone hates me, so I'm going to see if they follow me on Instagram. Or like, me like convince people hate the movie, so I'm going to like aggressively check Letterboxd and IMDb over and over and over again, and really focus on the negative reviews, like stuff like that. Like there are more, serious versions of that, but you basically don't engage in the things that cause you to spiral. And you sit there with your anxiety for 45 minutes as you listen to yourself on the loop tape telling you the things that may or may not happen. And eventually your anxiety dissipates, and you try to like track the scale of when it kind of dissipates. You're kind of tracking your anxiety and riding the wave down until you get to below a certain number, and then you can stop. And then you do it every day for a long time until the thing stops giving you, until your fight or flight starts triggering every time you have one intrusive thought. Because like we were talking about earlier, it's like the intrusive thoughts will never disappear, but you can definitely train yourself in a way to make them to know that they're just intrusive thoughts and don't matter, and to let them just flow out just as they went back in. It doesn't mean they won't come back. You can backslide at any moment. But like, those are like just two different examples of how you expose yourself to get yourself through that kind of like intense thing. And in fact, some of the exposures are like, let's say you're like, oh, I'm afraid, like, I'm going to kill a kid in a car crash. And then you like literally, it gets to, because you build yourself up, right? You start with like reading articles about people killing kids in car crashes. It's like the lower end of it, and you work your way that. But like maybe something in the mid tier and the upper tier is like you watching movies about kids dying in car crashes and sitting there in your anxiety for that long. Like you do this. It sounds horrific. It's like exposing it. It's like us as kids going on to rotten.com to see like terrible shit. But like it is that, especially when you've got this kind of constant brain, because your only other choice is to live on the verge of a panic attack for the rest of your life. And that is a huge no. No, thank you. So yeah, every time I describe it, people are like, that sounds like hell. And I'm just like, yeah, but the other option is death. So, what else do you do? And I'm like, it works. It really does. It works more than, and I can't do cognitive behavioral therapy because that's all about logic, and it's all about looking at the facts. And my brain doesn't care about facts, because even if I'm 100% sure that I did not have a bad interaction, and I talked to that person, and I'm like, everything was fine, right? They're like, yeah, I'm convinced that that's not true anyway. My brain will always find a way around it. So the goal is to be comfortable in the not knowing, and that is basically the entire process of ERP.
And how does this fit in with your creative process and writing? And I mean, I have to imagine that there are kind of some episodes or some times where it's not as conducive to writing, or perhaps
Yeah.
it's easier for to be drafting than to be creating original material. So how does this all fit in?
I usually, so if I'm in the deep throes of something bad, which has only happened, I would say it got like, so like for the month of December of last year, for example, after I was done with the film festival circuit, I went through a huge deep throes of just like astronomically terrible depression over the holidays, which is no surprise because my mom was manic every fucking December. So it's like, it happens. It's inevitable. I did a couple mistakes that made me really backslide. And those are the times where like, you don't need to, it's like, that's the thing is, it's like a lot, the negative feedback loop when you're in that hardcore of a depression, which OCD often triggers, is that you're such a piece of shit for letting yourself succumb to the sadness again. And that kind of prevents you from doing anything. Whereas like the reality is it's about creating very, very specific and short and doable tasks that give you a little bit of dopamine that allow you to push forward. It happened to me really terribly, like right before we got into Sundance with Touch Me, where I almost didn't finish the movie because I was spending 8 hours in the edit with Olivia, our lead, John, my producer, and Jess, our editor, and I was fucking useless, just in the throes of a panic attack for weeks. I forgot all. I mean, this is before I started OCD therapy, and then Olivia, which is the reason like we both bonded so much, and I think one of the reasons she's so good in this and Touch Me is because we bonded over our obsessive compulsive disorder. And while I knew I had it, I hadn't gone through this specific type of therapy, and I became like an overnight person where I would wake up at 7 p.m. and stay up till like 10 a.m. because it felt safer, because no one was up and no one felt like they could judge me, and I could barely edit the film because I was on such lack of sleep when I had to be there, and so they finished it for me. I'm honest about that, like like the last, like, because it happened like about the last week before we finished, so it wasn't like I was absent the whole time, but they had to bring it to lock for me. And then I started OCD therapy, but I wasn't well enough to do the work. Because I would just do it when I had my therapy session, but you really have to do it every day. So I would say, like, for me, not that I wish or hope that I have like a new breakdown, but the cycle of mental illness means it's inevitable that you will have it. It's just the hope is that you do enough work on yourself that becomes shorter and shorter. So that they're more like colds than like a 3-month bout of like, I don't know, pick or choose some illness that lasts that long. So, I tend to, but the weirdest thing, and this is the thing, is like, I would never do this. It's a bit like, a Phantom Thread, where like the guy who works so hard needs to be made sick by his partner in order for him to feel better about himself. And I don't treat these mental health moments as vacations, but, from time to time there is some kind of what brings you, I always say this, what brings you out of it, or what brings me out of it, is you start finding purpose and meaning in life again by doing these like very specific tasks. And then I'm able to, from there, take that experience and then narrativize it and then start outlining, because that's what brings me out of it. It's like the want or the need to create after I've like realized something during the throes of my I don't know what they, like it's like I'm dying of consumption, like of my consumption, and all of a sudden I'm out and it's like, oh shit, like, now I have the breath of fresh air to understand it. But I would say, like, regardless of whether those happen or not, my entire life, my entire goal is to try to understand the illnesses that I suffer from. So all my movies would be about that, really, right? So it's like, usually when I'm getting out of like a throw of it, like a new kind of like interesting way to explore it will come through. And I think that's kind of where I take it, and then I get excited and write through it, and then inevitably we'll go back down again. But it's kind of when like things get rocky. And I also have ADHD, which, like, ADHD and OCD is a nuclear bomb waiting to blow up, because not only do you have OCD, but then your inability to do basic tasks gives you so much shame that other people can just do naturally. So then I've started doing, like body doubling, like with my therapist and my boyfriend, where it's like, if someone's just there, I can do a lot of stuff. And I'm starting able, because this happened to me. It's like, after the release of Touch Me, which just happened, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think I couldn't wake up and brush my teeth. And I was like, you're such a fucking piece of shit. You can't stand up and brush your teeth. And now 3 weeks later with my therapist, and like, I'm able to brush my teeth, floss my teeth, wash my face, make breakfast, drink coffee, start my day, have a full day of work. But like, you don't get there overnight. You start by doing the babiest of tasks, and that leads you again to be creative and find purpose in life. I went about it, run at different places, but yeah, that's essentially kind of how I find it in my writing. It's always like a retrospective that gives me a new idea and then that gets me excited to move forward.
You mentioned bonding with Olivia Taylor Dudley over,
Mm-hmm.
your shared OCD, and I mean, you can just tell from the start, from that 8-minute monologue that she absolutely nails
Yeah.
in Touch Me, just how much she intimately understands the material. And I fell in love with the film from that opening scene.
Yeah. Yeah, and that, bringing back to talking about exposure and response prevention therapy, it's such a shame, but also highly necessary when a film comes out and you have to start telling people the synopsis, because no one's going to watch a movie with a very basic poster that goes, two best friends go to the house of someone who claims they're going to change their lives. And people are like, pass. But it was written in a way that you don't know that Brian is an alien until the end of the first act, when Craig sees the clip of her fucking the alien, and she goes, and he, like, it's like, that's when you find out. And so that monologue is written as an exposure and response prevention exercise, where the monologue is being told as if this woman was abducted by an alien, but in reality it was kind of like used as an exposure to make things more fantastical for what we can kind of glean to be some type of abusive relationship. But then the kind of like twist of it all is the reality is, like, of course, like, it's real. But and so, like, that, I think, was like, for me, that was like Olivia's but also because she understood like kind of everything that was happening and had kind of experienced certain things in terms of having a narcissistic personality disorder person, or like somebody who gets you, or like having a relationship with anything. It's like a person who, like, is bad for you, or heroin, or cigarettes, or alcohol, or video games, whatever you want to take, whatever gets you addicted, or whatever makes you avoid your problems. That's what this whole monologue is about. And it was the first day on set. It was the first thing that we shot. She had shot a movie, like just finished shooting movie, like 6 days prior. And never mind the fact that this was not the original Joey. The original Joey I developed this movie with for 2 years. And then Olivia stepped in, and it turns out like she fit the part like a glove, and was able to create such a, and it's like, there's no shade, because this happens all the time with actors, because they don't have the kind of like career that we do is like we spend like 3 years on a project. They just need jobs, like in like a very different world. So when like Hollywood calls and it's something much bigger, like there's no, like maybe there's a little bitterness, but then you get over it because it just happens. But things sometimes work out for a reason, because we found Olivia, and seeing her do that monologue and seeing her really truly live and go to those places, it's, in my opinion, one of the only reasons the movie, like the movie kind of connects itself, because of her performance. And it's just astounding that that was the very first thing she shot, and it was the very first take that we used.
And it's so perfect how you're also playing with the reliability and unreliability of the narrator, of mental health, of intrusive thoughts. It's like everything is packed in. And, that's even before we've mentioned that actually what she says in 8 minutes,
Yeah.
kind of spoiler, is the plot of the
Yeah, is
entire
it
film.
literally Yeah. No, I know, and it's like, that's the thing, is, to me, I knew I wanted to do it that way, because, like, my concept and the filmmaking of it was gonna be so, astoundingly, homaging of a lot of the different things. We were gonna go through so many tonal mashups, like, I didn't wanna also add the fact that, like, all of a sudden I'm just going to thrust you into a world in which there's like practical tentacles and all this stuff. And I think what that monologue does, what Olivia does with it, is like immediately puts you like head first, like in the thing in a very palatable way. And by the time the monologue's over, you're like, oh, I think I know what movie I'm going to be in, and I'm ready for the fucking ride. And like, it also is used as a, like, the hint of like, because everything in that monologue essentially happens again. Like, it's just a repeat or a retread or set up of like everything that's going to happen, despite it being a story that happened in the past. And the movie then, when it's bookended by the therapist, becomes a story within a story. And that, I think, is what allowed us to kind of take more of like liberties and risks with the stylistic nature of what is reality, by treating this movie as a story within a story, and then getting to do very theatrical style lighting, even when we're not on the sets specifically in the alien world, that are practical and 70s inspired, kabuki theater-esque sets and visuals. That monologue sets everything fucking up, and I'm really glad we did it. I got a lot of pushback on it, but then everybody saw it and went, I get it. That's actually the only way this movie can move forward. Like, can you imagine all of a sudden, like 5 minutes in, they're like, oh yeah, there's a porn sex tape with the dude fucking in, like, with the girl fucking a tentacle monster, and we're just like, yep, all right, Jesus fucking Christ, here we go. But yeah.
I mean, if anyone were to do that 5 minutes in, it would be you, Addison. I think you made the right choice with the 8-minute monologue.
Yeah.
The thing that really kind of blows me away is that, and I love it when any artist does this, a writer, a musician, or anything like that. It's like you have these unwritten rules that you're like, and one of them you don't open with a monologue. And my thing is this. Is like, if you're going to do something like that, you knock it out of the fucking park. That way no one can complain about it at all.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you did. It's like, it's like, if you have to know what you can't do and then go, you know what, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it so well that there'll be no complaints. And I mean, anyone complaining about this, the movie's just not for them.
Mm-hmm. And that's like something I realized too, right? There was like, we were always good. This is why I had to get off Letterboxd, but it's fine because I'll talk about it, because it like, I went through a whole questioning of myself as an artist as I was going through the release, because like, as the goal of this movie for me was, it's like, all right, I made my first feature. Now the second feature, I'm already going buck wild, but I'm going buck wild. So I can't pull my punches here. I can't make a kind of this. I can't make a kind of this. This has to be the boldest choices that you can make throughout the film. But in my mind, I'm like, when we got into Sundance, I was like, we made it, baby. I got to the top of the mountain. It is like, my life is, my world is going to change. And I would like have these moments of like, oh my God, my world's going to change. I made it to the top of the mountain. And then I got to Sundance, and then the clouds cleared from that mountain. And then the scariest fucking mountains with like wildebeests and like fucking demons all of a sudden showed up. Then they were like, oh no, now you have to climb that. And I went, oh shit. And then like a lot of people loved the movie, but then there was like a, user related backlash backlash to it as well. And then I started, especially like with people being very like I don't think it's unfair criticism, especially if you don't like kind of lock into the movie of like the tonal visions of like trying to like make light of certain things and then immediately kind of abut it with something that is dark. And I started really questioning myself as an artist. I was traveling the world and it was so fun. And I had met so many friends and it was so cool to see audiences from different countries react to the movie. But at the back of my mind, I stopped watching it because I was kind of embarrassed that like this was how I chose to explore topics of mental health and sexual trauma that like happened to me and like some of the people closest to me. And I was like, did I do something wrong? And especially during the dramatic scenes, I would watch it and like get really uncomfortable. But then later in the festival world, when I started getting towards the release, I kind of sat down and forced myself to watch it again. And I'm like, no, Addison, the reason you're getting uncomfortable with this part is because these are the parts that are necessary for the rest of the film to work. You can't have these ridiculous kind of tentacle fucking movie tropes and like the colors without the like deep and utter groundedness that is these people's lived experience and their traumas. And you're getting uncomfortable because they're speaking to you and they're getting close to home. But if you sit through that, don't worry, there's going to be a laugh later. And that to me makes me go, finally, 14 months later, I go, no, I set out to make the exact movie I was meant to make or wanted to make. And I'm very proud of all of us because it's not just me that made this film. Every single person on this film had a direct impact on its artistry. And from now on, it's like, we'll see if I stick to this because my brain could backslide. But it's like, it people have I'd rather be 9 people's favorite thing than 100 people's ninth favorite thing is one of my favorite quotes from Title of Show musical. And that should be what I want to be like myself as a career is like speak to like every ninth person who goes, oh dude, yeah, that's exactly what it feels like to go through an OCD breakdown, or that's exactly like the kind of thing that like makes it ring true what it was like to go through trauma like that as a child or even now. And like that's happened to me over the course of this run. And it's like those are the freaks that I found, and those are the freaks that I will continue to listen to because there are enough of us. And that made the whole process completely worth it. And I'm glad I went through this journey. I'm not like happy that I kind of abandoned my own film at one point, but like looking back on it now, like I'm through the like kind of looking glass and know that like this is the kind of shit that I want to make. And I'm not going to please everybody, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think a lot of the things that you were worried about are the things that I perceive to be the strength of Touch Me. And I mean,
Exactly.
yeah. And I wanted to know how on earth you balance the comedy, the wildness, the over the top nature with these heavy thematic concerns.
I think it's going to be a little bit of a retread of a former answer, but I'll try to build on it. Is that's like that is what's helpful with the trauma that I've gone through. It's what helps me cope. It's what ERP is all about. Another example of like an exposure is like being afraid that I'm going to kill myself. I'm not suicidal, but I'm afraid that I'm going to do it. And so I imagine myself holding the knife as Elmo from Sesame Street touches my arm and goes, "Don't kill yourself, Addison, or Rocco will win." And I go, and so every time I think about suicide, I just imagine Rocco winning and Elmo being really mad about it. And that is, in a sense, is the tone of Touch Me, right? Is it's like you have these like really devastating moments, and like I'll take for example like it usually gets a huge laugh in the theater when Craig goes, hi, I was molested by my uncle. And then we do this like kind of fun bit. And then you watch him talk about the story that happened. And he realizes that it's not fucking funny and doesn't know where to go because he's using humor as that's his whole thing. He's using this what I did the whole time. He's using humor as a defense mechanism. And in reality, it's not humor first and then trauma. It's trauma and then exposing yourself to that trauma through funny ways that allows you to become a little more comfortable moving day to day. But like starting with the humor first as a cover for your trauma allows you essentially to make jokes that aren't jokes. And I am so guilty of it. And I was guilty of it for so long, and I'm probably still a little guilty of it. Jokes that are true, but that you use in like the humorous landscape, when in reality you should have just communicated that you were upset, or that you're not okay. And I'm just, as a person now, like, who has gone through all of this stuff, I'm tired of lying to people. I think when it gets particularly bad, that's when I go away in my hole and I deal with it with my therapist. But like, if somebody like says, "How are you?" And they're not like they're not like a stranger. Like, I'm not gonna go like, "How are you?" And I'm just like, "Well, let me tell you my life story." It's more just like, you're talking with a friend and you're just honest about it, rather than like making jokes about why you're upset with somebody and then people giggle, but they're not jokes. And so it's like that to me is like the journey, right? It's like don't cover it with humor, like change your perspective on it so you're less affected in a way by the things that happen to you. At least that's what ERP kind of like does. And so that to me feels like the tone of Touch Me. It's like we start humor and it's the wrong way, then we get drama, and then we like turn it into humor that in a way is kind of the right way of like existing within the landscape of the cosmos that is fucking OCD and depression and anxiety.
I relate to so much that you're saying here. And, whenever I'm talking about traumatic things that I've gone through, it's really difficult for me to not make a joke or to add
Yeah.
some humor or to try and inject some lightness. I can't just kind of upfront be like that. This was terrible. I have
Yeah.
to make jokes. And
Yeah. It's funny. There's like a different, it's like there's something that like is like the something that's changed with me. It's also interesting too, right? Is it's like when you've gone through, like, I'm not saying this is a beautiful thing. It's like, I think the unhealthy thing about dealing with your trauma and you're not kind of over it is thinking that the worst things have happened to you and nobody else can kind of understand you, versus understanding that like a lot of people can understand you, but like you can't. When I'm going through this, because I've had to talk about my life, my trauma, because I can't not do it in press, because it is just what the movies are about. And I can't be like, well, I don't know. And it's just like, because I just write from a very personal place, and not everybody does. And some people do and don't want to talk about it, and that's okay. And some people don't write about personal, and then they find success and they write really honestly too. It's like, there's all different versions of creation. But for me personally, it's like, no, this is part of it for me. I also have to find a way to make it palatable, but it's like a different thing, right? Is it's like like, but this is also like once I have been through it and gone through the other side, when I'm dealing with something like really specifically of the moment, like my perspective changes. And actually that's when people know that I'm really down, because I will stop making jokes and it'll just be really flat and honest. And I like doing that with people because it leads to more like, grounded and connected conversations with like with like specific and real friends that I have in my life. But, on the other side, like, it's like I'm on a stage doing a Q&A. You have to make it palatable, because no one wants to, let's like, listen. I mean, people do, like, if they're in the right mode for it, but in a movie about tentacle fucking, like, we ride the wave in my Q&As and my intros, much like we ride the wave in the movie. So there's like this like a protection there for me that allows me to talk about it. But I've done it so many times, and I've done the work that like it's no longer affecting. And so that's like the different perspective that I have on it now, if that makes sense.
so, when did you first know that you wanted to tell stories and to be involved in film professionally? And what was your first professional sale?
What I wanted to get, what I wanted to get, what I first started professionally. Okay, so it was my web series, which is a very interesting, different kind of, but also I guess kind of similar, only in the sense that like it's about a bunch of sorority crime fighters trying to destroy evil frat scum. And it uh was how I started into film. So basically I was 20, let's see, I was 26, 25, and I was, much like Color Me Shocked, that it came out of depression. And I basically was watching Gilmore Girls till like 4 a.m, eating like pizza rolls out of a bucket. And it was around the time of Scream Queens, the Ryan Murphy show, and it was just like a send up of college. And I found it so funny that I kind of used that and combine that with my love of Buffy to create what's called Kappa Force. And I was doing theater at the time in Chicago, and everybody had their community, and I really felt like not ostracized by any means. Everybody was my friend, but I hadn't found my artistic partners. So with this script, I was like, I want to make this. I want to make this now. I have no idea how because I didn't go to film school. So what are we going to do here? And so essentially, talked to my one friend and was like, hey, I want to make this. Can you read this? I think there's a part for you. And they're like, yes, I know one person. So I met my friend Hannah Welliver, who's now a lifelong friend and future collaborator, hopefully one day. We've made 2 projects together, and we crowdfunded the thing and then made it. And then I moved to LA because I was in Chicago at the time, and I was like, peace, everybody, I'm going to be famous. And then I wasn't famous after 5 minutes because, everybody had a web series in LA. It was like in Finding Nemo with the seagulls. People were like, I have a web series. I have a web series. And I was like, oh, no. So yeah. So basically, I was like, oh no. And so I started making more shorts. I made 3 short sci-fi short films in the realm of like Black Mirror. They were like queer in one location. But while that was happening, Kappa Force started playing film festivals, which was cool. And it played the now defunct New York Television Festival, which was the like big web series festival that anybody can get into it. I'm pretty sure it died the next year or the year after, but it was like long running. And like, you were like, wow, HBO is here, Freeform's here. Like, I'm going to make it. Of course, didn't. But then later at another film festival in Vermont, this like small indie streaming service was like, hey, we want to buy your web series. And, it wasn't a huge sale, didn't put me on the map, but it was money. And that was cool. And I was like, we sold it. And of course, like the streaming service is now kind of defunct and it doesn't really exist anymore. And we were pulled to the ringer. So maybe the the lesson there was like, hey, it's never going to be as good as you think it is. But that's pessimistic. But it was the thing that I was like, okay, I'm doing something right. And I think for me, it's like less monetary success because, while it's like nice to make these movies, I'm not going to pretend like I'm, like getting thrown cash by the Warner Brothers balloon. But it did give me what gave me the like strength to keep going was as I kept creating pieces of work, I started collecting the tribe of people I was going to work with, The web series led me to meet some other directors who I wanted to work with. And this was before I was a director. I was still just a writer producer because I didn't think that I had the gall, the gumption, or the chops to do it. But I just kept making things, and and the validation was less monetarily and more just like film festivals just kept putting us in there. And we weren't getting into like Sundance or South by Southwest or, TIFF, but we were getting into like good, solid genre film festivals, Fantasia being kind of the biggest and my favorite and one that I've now played 4 times. And so it just like that gave me the strength to keep going. And then it was Hypochondriac, the first feature, where after the mental breakdown, I found people who really cared. My forever producer, John Humber, and his producing partner, Bay, that that was kind of like the biggest thing. And then, premiered at South by Southwest and sold to XYZ. And all of a sudden, boom, I had an actual movie sold that got put in, 10 theaters, but like, we got like, you get your physical media out of it. It gets put on a streaming service. You feel like, okay. And I'd also like really got to prove to my dad that like I was doing something, even more so with Sundance. Cause it's like, there's that thing that'll make you feel smaller and more humbled that when you connect with somebody that's not in the film festival world and you're like, yeah, so my movie played at a place called Sundance. It's in Park City. Do you know it? And they go, no. And I go, well, that's great. But yeah, I mean, so that's essentially like the smallest sale was the first thing. We sold for like 15 grand. We made it for like 50, so it wasn't a big sale. But then that led to me making further projects and continuing down the rabbit hole of deluding myself into thinking I can make this a career.
Well, I mean, the delusion seems to be going pretty well at the moment. So,
I know, but
yeah,
you just have to pretend that you're good enough in a way. You just have to, because this stupid industry is so hard. So you're just like, oh no, no, it's gonna happen one day. And
yeah,
you delude yourself long enough, and you just stick around long enough that you find the people who you can find and create meaning with. It's like no one comes out of like a gopher hole and goes like, and some people do, don't get me wrong, they like come out of film school, make a feature film, Sundance, all of a sudden you're directing a Star Wars. But like it's just like mostly this like long gradual kind of hilly up and down, and then people are just like, wow, first feature premiering, like made for 20th Century Fox. And like they've been going around with the script for 15 years. They were someone's assistant. They were working as an AD on set, like slowly forming these connections and building their own artistic visions of how they want to create art. It's just like that is the journey of the artist. It's just completely and utterly entrenching yourself in the art, and whatever version you can grasp onto, and then slowly working your way towards what you want to do, and realizing that all the friends you made along the way are willing and want to help you because you helped them. And that's the beauty. There's no like stealing. There's no, I mean, people do, but like, there's no like, I think people find this, like, sometimes find this industry very transactional, but I find it the opposite. It's like you're friends with people first. That's the first thing. If I can give any advice to people who like are wanting to break in or playing their first film festival, it's like you're not trying to meet the HBO lady, because the HBO lady doesn't care about you, which is a good thing. You're finding the other people who are your peers. Who, my favorite thing is Fantasia. When my first short film that I wrote and produced, Ava in the End, premiered there in this international science fiction block, three of us had our feature film premieres at South by 3 years later. It's like those are the people that like you're gonna collect and connect and grow with, and then now it's like that I'm two features in, like I can go to any film festival and feel warmth and friendship and hang out with people, because like I've been around where it's a community of artists, especially in the genre world, and it's so um gratifying when we get to see each other succeed. It's really nice. Doesn't mean there's not jealousy, because come on, I'm a human. But like it is also really nice to be like, oh wow, like look at us grow together. And that's what you want, because you don't want to be like 55, 60 years old and you've reached the top of that very scary mountain with the demons and you're alone, because you don't have anybody with a bow and arrow to shoot those demons down. You want a tribe, you want an army of the people that you've grown with to collect and commiserate with and love, and then when you're at that top of the mountain, you can create your little fortress of solitude where you murder all the demons, and then you see other people who maybe were a little below you, and then you can help fend off the demons with them, and they can collectively grow your little society that you're building on the top, if that's a good metaphor. But yeah, so that's like, I think like I forgot the question, but that's okay. um
I think it is a good metaphor, because I was with you throughout, and then when you threw the demons in, I mean that was the equivalent of the unicorn come. That was great. So,
yeah, it also connected back to our early part of the conversation. So sometimes this brain works.
there you go. And I mean, at This Is Horror, we're really concerned in the nuts and bolts of creativity and
Yeah.
writing. So
Mhm.
I'm wondering, what does a typical working day or working week look like for you?
Yeah.
And typically, how many projects do you have on the go at a single time?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, I generally have one that is my main focus. It doesn't mean that I can't go back and do other things, but I generally focus on one script at a time. And I think for the best way for me, because of my executive dysfunction and my ADHD, is to really and truly take things one step at a time. Doesn't mean that other things work or don't work. This is just what works for me because I'm a very fast writer, but I have to be very prepared by the time I get to writing, and I lose steam so quickly. So it's all about building up your pace and being consistent. And it starts with very, very simple idea of like that you just take from the artist's way of morning pages. For me, when I'm getting into a new project, because I journal sometimes too, especially when I'm in the throes of it in the darkness, because that helps me out. But when I'm creating a project and I like maybe have a log line or I have a sense of characters, I know what it to be about. I don't start putting it in like a Word document. I free write. And the goal of the free write is essentially nothing. But if I can assign a goal to it, is to find or discover one new thing about the script a day and your 3 pages that you're journaling. And that's all the writing you have to do. You don't have to write for 9 hours. You don't need to stare at the screen hitting your head against the wall. You don't need to make up constant excuses for you to get up and like eat more gummy bears, which, I've been there. But it's like you don't need to do any of that. You just need to sit down and journal, put your phone away, listen to music or however you want to focus and just write 3 pages in your journal. And then you just start doing that every day. And eventually you're going to get bored. And so you're going to want to stick to some structure. And then you'll start creating the things that are required from an outline. I tend to like outlines because I'm very bad at story, but I'm very good at dialogue. So I tend to do the outline, all the like shitty kind of work that I hate doing up front. So by the time I get to the script, I can just play. And so I will just start forming the thing. So I'll start with the log line in the journal. And like, journal for 3 pages, somewhere in there is the log line or the completed long line. Once I'm done with the log line, I'll go to the synopsis. Somewhere in the next day's 3 pages, there'll be the synopsis, and I'll keep it in long form. I won't even put it in the outline, in an outline or in a document form. And then I'll get to character descriptions, and I'll write all the character descriptions. And once I have all that, I start outlining free writing. I don't even need to go, this happens and this happens, this happens. It's like, well, in the span of the first act, these are kind of the things that happen. These are kind of the things that happen. And then once I kind of like loosely look into it in these 3 pages, remember, this is like over the course of a month, 2 months, 6 months, doesn't matter. You go at your own pace. So what only matters is that you're consistent, even if it's just 30 minutes a day and you're journaling for 3 pages. That's just how I start because it's very difficult for me to get into the flow of things. And this helps me. And so once I get through the outline, I'll start specifically outlined, but still in long form. I'll log it all the way through, and I'll get to the end, and I'll have my like 40 scenes and my 4. What they call it a 3-act structure, but it's really a 4-act structure because the second act is 2 acts. But I'll have the 4 acts, and then I'll take that, and then I'll finally go to the document that I've been putting off because I'm lazy, and I'll try to read my handwriting, and I'll put in my log line, my synopsis, my character descriptions, and then I'll put in the outline. And that's where usually the outline is just like the 40 scenes. And that's where finally I'm at the outline and finally I've got the 40 scenes. I start going into a detailed kind of description of every scene on the computer. And then boom, you've got a fully outlined thing. And I would bet it's better than you would have if you start on the computer, at least for me very specifically, because I took my time and I thought about it. And normally what it does to you is like, people always think of writing as like the time you spend at your computer, but that's not the case because usually when your mind wanders, you're taking a walk, you're taking a shit, you're taking a shower, your brain wanders, and that's when the like moments of the light bulb come up, and they come out of nowhere. It's like the opposite of a negative intrusive thought. It's like a positive intrusive thought, and you'll go, oh my God. And then, like I would encourage people whenever they have those ideas to write them down because I'm the type of person who goes, I'll remember it. No, I won't. So it's like, that's the idea, right? Is it's like, so you have these ideas and you're constantly thinking about it now. You've created or you fostered the kind of artistic self to allow itself to just come to you as you're just journaling 30 to 45 minutes a day. And that'll get you to the outline. And then what I do is I take that outline and I send that to a very close group of collaborators. I'm in a writer's group right now, so I send it to my writer's group, and then I send it to my forever producer, John. And then in the case of this new one, I send it to the lead actress, Olivia, who I'm writing it for. And I got notes based off that outline. And then I retool the outline, and then that's it. I won't get any more notes. That's the outline that I have. And then I'll I'll go to pages. And for me, pages take exactly 20 days because I'm writing 2 scenes a day. I'm taking a week and I'm going Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and I'm writing exactly 2 scenes a day. I'm just really, really, really doing it into bite-sized moments so it feels so I don't feel overwhelmed. And like, and if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. You don't need to shame yourself. Even if you write 1 scene, that's fine. Even if you write a sentence, that's fine. But the hope is by that point, you've built yourself up in your momentum that you're doing it every day, that you'll want to do the two scenes. And for me, writing 2 scenes could take literally 15 minutes and then I'm done for the day. Or it could take an hour just because it's a particularly, I find that dialogue driven scenes don't take me long at all. But then I get into like logistical scenes where a lot of action needs to happen. And that takes me a while to build up into doing it. But the point is I do them. So by the time, but then you set yourself a goal, it's just 2 scenes a day. And if you want, you could just do 1 scene a day and then write 5 scenes a week. And that'll take you 2 months to get through the script. I like to do it in 1 month just because I've put myself up. I mean, I've written, lots of scripts now. So this is the thing that I found that works for me. And then by then, you've probably gotten a much stronger first draft that you can't, like, you just call it first draft because it's first draft in name, but you've been sitting with the script for a bit. You've really been thinking about the script the whole way through. And then at the very end of it, like, you've done so much work, but you've really parsed it out into these bite-sized moments that boom, you've got a script that's a lot more advanced than it would have if you just sat down to free write. And it allows maybe like a draft or 2, like maybe draft 3, you're now very confident with, and then can go out to, if you're in like the more of the, like where I am in my career, you like go to your manager and have them send it out, or, like get smaller. It's like try to find producers, or like maybe you're making a short and now you have the script that you can talk about at film festivals, or like maybe you find it good enough that you could submit to a writing competition, or like whatever it is. But that tends to be what the journey that I found now as I've written, like, well, I don't know how many scripts I've written, but like, well, there's a bunch of the scripts that I've written that will never see the light of day, and then there's like the scripts that I'm proud of. But that's kind of my process now that I found that works for me.
And I feel that for almost all writers and creatives, this kind of recurring theme of don't shame, don't self-shame, is something that we all kind of need to know, because I feel there's always a tendency, if you're not careful, to want to do more, to want to so-called achieve more, and to almost rush through it in a sense, or to have deadlines that are self-imposed. No one's telling you to write, let's say, 5 scenes a day, but then you might decide, oh, I'm a piece of shit if I only did 1 scene in the whole day. But a lot of what you're saying, it seems there's a lot that we can learn from it. And it's like sometimes to get ahead, you have to slow down. You have to make it more manageable.
Yeah. Everybody writes differently. Everybody, like, some people, like, I got a buddy of mine who has to spend 8 hours a day writing, and it doesn't mean he's writing 50 pages, but like he sits down and he's like, this is the time I'm gonna write. I just cannot focus for that long, just really. But I'm really fast when I focus. That's the thing, right? So writing is one part of my day. And this would be different. This is when I have no deadlines, right? If somebody tells, because I've written a script in a week when I had to, when someone's like, or a rewrite, really. I've never written a script in a week. Well, that's not true. I wrote a play in a week when I had to. This is the thing. You do what you have to do. But if you've got the time and you want to do it right, and even if it needs to be a shorter timeline, like, but it's all about realistic, doable goals that build you into the momentum that allow you to be there for longer and longer. And that's just how I've learned with like dealing with my ADHD and my executive dysfunction, is that really, really, and you can even fucking, dude, create a checklist for yourself, and don't just include writing on it. Like, make a whole thing for yourself. Like, and you don't even have to like make the whole list first. Just start doing tasks, whatever gets you in the momentum, because writing sucks. It's so hard. Fuck it. It's worst. Everybody wants to have written. No one wants to start. And so, including me. So it's like, I literally go, wake up, make coffee, check it off, brush teeth, check it off, floss teeth. And I'm starting to do that now. I know I'm an adult. And then wash your face, moisturize your face. Okay, make breakfast. Okay, now we've got these things. Isn't that great? Do we need to take a shower? Okay, take a shower. Okay, what if okay, you do Duolingo? I mean, obviously, if you've seen Touch Me, I do Duolingo. I'm in like the 2000 streak at this point. Do my Duolingo for however long I need to do it. And that maybe I need to meditate. It's like, do the list. Maybe I need to exercise. And don't even talk about like lifting weights for 30 minutes. Maybe I just want to walk for 5, do 30 jumping jacks. Let's make it so simple. And then by the time like you kind of built this momentum throughout your day, and this is also including like if you like are an independent contractor, it's like easier. Like if you have a 9 to 5, then it's like, I understand the like, but it also works there too, because it's like you expend all this energy. It's like, how do we get that momentum back? But like, you don't need to write for 8 hours if you don't like, you could just write for 15 minutes, for 20, for 30, build yourself up to that hour. And it's like, just take it. And then by the time I find it really lovely, the physical nature of it, because there's an end game. You're not standing at a white page, you're physically writing. And if you remove the want to getting something done, the free write is like whatever you want. You could write, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this for 3 pages. But like it's been known, it's been proven that eventually you'll stop. Like, you'll stop because you get bored. You can only tell yourself you're a piece of shit for so long before you're like, all right, like, let's take a break. Even when you're in the throes of your depression, you're like, I hate myself, I hate myself, I hate myself. Okay, I'm tired of that. Maybe I'll go masturbate. So it's just like you just have the masturbation. So it's like we all find our ways, and we do get bored, and then we'll go back to our self-loathing. But like there are moments where like you just get bored of yourself, and so that's when you'll start finding the creativity. And that to me, if someone's having a lot of trouble, that I, as a person who has a lot of trouble starting, I found that like parsing it like that is really helpful.
Yeah, the whole guilt thing, I've been dealing with that. I mean, my entire life, but
Right.
over the past couple of months, I've been feeling it a lot, because I feel like that if I'm not like typing, like for any amount of time, getting pages out, that I'm worthless. And so I get an idea, I get momentum, I get going on it, and I can't do nothing with the idea because it's just an idea. I haven't played with the idea. I haven't toyed with it. And so like if you see behind me on my dresser over here, I've got behind that heavy metal magazine, there's 3 notebooks there. And so lately what I've been doing is I've been, basically just writing background stories about my characters and things like that, because I don't know where to go with this fucking story. And I'm like, so I'm like, I need another distraction. And so I used to be a really good guitar player, and I started playing guitar again. And so now I'm like, and so I got a guitar basically this week, and it's first time in about 15 years, and the muscle memory's coming back, and I feel like that I'm getting good, and I'm like, but I'm getting like a healthy form of guilt. It's like you got that computer over there at that keyboard, and it needs some love, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm actually gonna play around with these notebooks when my fingers get sore.
Yeah.
And so I'm just, I'm keep going back to this. I'm like, I'm not gonna do this until I'm bored with this.
Well, it's also good too to just, I mean, again, I'm like pulling from the artist's way, because not like I've never fully done the artist's way, but like I've like I know the like kind of grand kind of gestures of it all, and I find that like we think like not only is it like writing is so many different things. It's not just sitting down in the notebook. It's taking yourself to watch a movie. It's reading a book. It's like it's sometimes even reading the news, as much as like I don't know how much news you want to read these days, but like it's like, or like reading like investigative articles, or like short stories, or nonfiction, or like any of that kind of stuff that like stimulates your brain into artistry. Like Touch Me like was born because I started watching films from Japan, and also like loved the movie The Untamed. Like it all comes from, and that's the thing, and like good artists steal, right? Or like we take all these things, and that stimulates your brain too. It's like whatever you can find to stimulate your artistic expression in your brain, you do. Guitar is wonderful, even if it seems like you're procrastinating. Don't shame yourself. Like there may be a sense like where eventually it's like it turns into avoidance, but like that's also the thing too, right? And it's the thing that we deal with. It's like talking about like what gets you through depression. I think I forgot to mention, but this is also including writing. Is it's like usually when I'm afraid somebody hates me, what I do now is I just go back up and talk to them again. And more often than not, like you'll find that it was all in your head. And you're not telling yourself this for reassurance because you can't ask them if they hate you. You can't ask them, if you said something wrong before, because that's seeking reassurance. But you can have a different conversation about something else. And you don't go into that conversation looking for context clues. You kind of forget the part of your brain. You let it go and you just have the conversation. So I find the same thing with writing. Is it's like, are you doing other things because you're avoiding it, or are you doing it because you're stimulating your autistic brain? And as long as you end up going back to the page, even if it's just to write a word, I swear to you, it can be that fucking small. Even if you draw a stick figure of one shot, this is all forward momentum. And it's okay if like you have forward momentum for a while and then you stop. Like this last script that I was writing, I didn't stick to the Monday through Wednesday. And I was really sad, or Monday through Friday. I was really sad about it because I would hit days where I just got completely lost to myself. And then I was like, I didn't stick to it. Fuck. And then I got depressed for 2 days and I was like, okay, well, actually, let's go write a scene. And then I go write the scene and I was like, all right, I'm back in. And it's like, right? It's just like this, don't shame. Like, it's just a shame spiral. Nobody hates you as much as yourself, man. Nobody is thinking about you as much as you think you hate yourself. Like, if you just allow yourself to be kind and allow yourself the ability to make mistakes in your process, it'll come a lot easier than you being like, it's the same with, it's everything, right? It's a shame spiral with eating. It's a shame spiral of like, well, I'm not going to go to this event because last time I went to that event, like this person didn't want to talk to me. It's like, who fucking cares? Like you have to, it's all exposures. It's all avoidance that you have to eventually do and accept, because that's the only way forward. Because I have the issue that if I don't do these exposures, I'm going to end up on my couch that gives me really bad back pain, looking at my phone, like ripping from my nicotine vape like it's a fucking lollipop, and stay there for years. And it's like, is that going to be the option? No. I mean, Lord knows, I kind of want it to be, but like but that's only part of my brain. You have to constantly expose yourself to your fears, and not that like, and you build up to it. You don't like go skydiving if you're so afraid of heights, but like it's little baby steps. And like I'm afraid to write. That's where mine comes from. I'm not speaking for everybody, but I'm afraid to write because what if it's bad? What if I don't come up with something? What if I get stuck? It's all just that journey of creating these bite-sized moments and that forward momentum that allows you to get out of your own way.
Yeah, I have all these what if questions as well, but ultimately to try and motivate myself, it's like, well, what if it sucks? Who fucking cares? Write something else.
Yeah.
Try again.
Also, like plenty of
Yeah.
movies suck. Like,
Yeah.
let's not get it twisted.
Yeah. And like I'll always have this thing where whatever I've written previously, I'll be like, oh, well, that was good. But now what I'm writing, no, it's shit. Whatever magic I had, it's gone. But then, when that one's done, it's like, oh, well, actually, it's all right. There's something here. So I just have to now try to remember, no, everything you fucking written in the moment, you had these moments where you thought it was shit, or you had self-doubt, or you were hating.
Yeah.
So write in
We
spite of
yeah.
that.
We also tend to like only remember, it's like the negative bias brain, right? We always tend to
Yeah.
remember the negative side of all these experiences, and you forget the triumphs, right? Like you forget the triumphs of your own fucking experience for the favorability of the negative ones. We're as artists, we go constantly or oscillating back to thinking we're the most genius writer who ever existed to the worst writer that's ever lived, and it can happen in a day. You could think you're the best, and then all of a sudden you get stuck in that negative bias. It's like Edgar Wright loved my movie and posted about it. Like he came to one of our screenings, and for some reason a 20-year-old from Iowa means more to my opinion than, like, no shade to Iowa, great state, but like it just, for some reason it's like, why isn't it like one of my like like cinematic director heroes liking my movie, why is that not as important as like the negative internet chatter is sometimes? And so it's like, again, it's the shame spiral. It's getting in your own way. We're trained to think we're pieces of shit, especially if we've been through trauma. And it's just like, like getting out of that way and learning that you're just not important as important as you think you are. You're not the worst at anything, and you're also probably not the best at anything. Just like in the reality, it's like that's just the form of ego. That's the narcissist brain that others preventing you from succeeding or deluding you into thinking you matter way more than you actually do. But in reality, you are a person. You have so little time on this fucking planet, and you are a speck of sand in the entirety of the universe that where nothing matters. And I don't mean that negatively. I mean that to be freeing, because like, and also you don't need to shame yourself into that either, but it's all like whatever helps you get back to the page, because you're not going to be good until you're bad, unless you're bad first, and like you're not going to be anything unless there's something there. So it's just like, get yourself to the page. And if the way you get there is for a year, write one word and create, and maybe every 9 days you create a sentence, fine. Like I use that, for, hyperbole. Hopefully you're doing more than that, but that's okay. It's all about the journey. And I feel like a lot of film, especially even like more so than theater, is so product based because there is literally at the end of the day a product that lives for the rest of your life. But we forget that like the journey is the point. It's always, and I'm like, I feel like right now I'm just like, look how wise I am. Like I'm talking to myself too all the time, because I don't follow these rules every day. I have to remind myself this too. Like that's why I've created this system for myself that works, because I'm constantly dealing with the negative chatter of everything that I'm talking to you about right now. The things that you're dealing with is the things that I deal with consistently to this day, every day for the rest of my life. But like I'm trying to remind myself and trying to instill in others the excitement that it is to feel like you've succeeded on the day-to-day basis, not the entire product, but the day-to-day basis. My whole goal when giving feedback, and I hope one day to get to teach, is to make you fucking excited to continue writing. That's the goal of the person who's reading your script. Unless it's like so offensive and so utterly horseshit, then you have to figure out a way to put them down gently. But I gotta say, that's rarely the case. And even if it is, you can put them down a path. You can exist in this way to give somebody the confidence that they feel that they get to continue. And I'm doing that with myself too. It's just, easier to do it with other people, because like you don't have to live you don't have to live in their brain, and they don't have to live in mine.
You're so right, because everything is so content, not, and I mean content as in a product. Everything now is so product based, and it doesn't really help me, because I'm in a retail world where results matter. It's like well, I talked to 10 people today. How many sales did you make? And
Right.
so it's like everything is so content based that we're like, I literally, I thought this the other day. I was like, damn man, I really got to get something out. And I'm like, motherfucker, I just had a book come out in September.
Yeah.
What the
Yeah.
fuck? I mean,
Yeah.
like, fuck, dude, you just wrote 30,000 word novella that you don't like, but you fucking wrote it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And last year you wrote 50,000 word part of a novel that you abandoned. You didn't like it either, but you fucking wrote it.
Yeah.
And so now I've got two things that I could sit there and tweak and play with, but it's like you get caught in this, I got to do something now. It's like, fuck, I've been doing things.
Yeah. And that's the thing too.
Sometimes
Yeah.
I just want to listen to music or listen to a podcast or play guitar,
Yeah.
like John Mellencamp said, play guitar,
Yeah. You can't, you have to, you have to remember too, you have to live your life. Because where else are you going to fucking pull from if not your own life? And I don't just mean like your own personal life, but like your creative self of being the ability to create. You have to fill up your creative like magic meter before it can be depleted again. It can't just be a constant go, go, go. That's why the journey is what it is. Like the creating of it from the script to then like trying to, I mean, I'm talking like specifically writer director, but it could be, put everything in it. But like you create the script, you have to find financing, which is annoying. You have to cast, which is annoying. You get into set, which is amazing. You get into post, which makes you want to shoot yourself. And then you wait for the release, which makes you want to shoot yourself. Then you get into a film festival, which makes you high on the fucking like cocaine. And then you go through the film festival, you don't sell for a while, makes you want to kill yourself. And then you finally sell and you're like, okay, feeling a little good. You go through the release, makes you want to kill yourself. You get out through the release, you're like, okay, I did it. And then now I'm through it and I'm like, fuck, I have to start over again. And then you feel like you can't do it, but I'm just like, you're just at the end of a 3-year long journey or 2-year long journey, or it's a huge thing. You need to, again, build up your thing. It just depends where you are on the journey, but it's all important. Like, that's the thing with AI, right? It's like why I feel like, not to bring AI into this, but why I actually do have a lot of hope, because all AI is just product, 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 product. There's no journey. So, and my hope and my theory is that, like, what the world has not, most people does not have connection to, or the thing that they can say that they've created a piece of art, they spent time doing it and released it and it was viewed. That's rare, right? However, my hope is the people who didn't have time to do that maybe had office jobs or chose a different path and like left to the creatives to be more of a hobby, which is like amazing too, is that like AI is like, oh wow, the first time you get to see something parroted back at you that like you were essentially the creator for. But if there's anything, I'm stealing this from somebody else, but I really, really believe this. But like the only thing that is true about life is like suffering. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, like, you literally have to work through it in order to achieve something. And eventually, when you can just achieve something in 5 seconds and see it and it's really cool, you're going to get bored. It's like calling yourself a piece of shit. You're going to get bored. And my hope is, and it's kind of what happened with the younger generation, that their obsession with like physical media now and camcorders, it's that like everybody's going to realize that like the creation of art's important. They no longer want to see something parroted back at them in 5 seconds, and then they'll start being creative. And we'll all forget this visual, like generated AI art that made an episode of Mad Men look like The Simpsons as a kind of a gimmick, the way that virtual reality is. I could be completely wrong. We are really truly living in the stupid part of the future, but like it is like, it's all, like it's all kind of related to the idea of like, we never, as artists, we never feel like we're doing enough. Despite the fact that we are. As humans, we never feel like we're doing enough, but for the most part, we are. And it's just, it's that negative bias brain that kicks us in the ass and tells you don't matter, and it makes us meaner. And it's our whole goal in life is to fight against that and exist in a world that we feel content, not happy, but content.
I love the whole bit where you talk about suffering,
Yeah.
because one of my favorite lines from any film is from Hellraiser, when
Mm-hmm.
Pinhead tells Kirsty not to cry. It's a waste of good suffering. And that line is not just a throwaway line.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically don't cry because you haven't even fucking lived yet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I see, that's where Pinhead is like, because they're not, their whole, the Cenobite's job is to give you, your desires, pain and pleasure.
Yeah.
And so the suffering is part of living. And if you use AI, you haven't suffered. So that's why it's devoid of life.
Yeah. I mean, that's also the thing too, right? Is it's like, it's why you grow. It's why your writing gets better as you've lived. Like when you're in high school and somebody breaks up with you, it's like the end of the world. When I was in 4th grade and got bullied by these kids and sent to the principal's office and lost all of my friends, it felt lonely and sad. When I was in the closet before I came out, I felt alone and sad. That's why It Gets Better happened. It's like it's not saying that, like, because I'm not saying like, oh, like some self-help thing, that like, it's not like people don't suffer, it's not like people don't take back steps, it's not like the world isn't out there to fuck you, but like it is funny. It's like you get this perspective as you get older that allows you, if you do it in the like, and you're able to like use it in like the positive sense, like you become better because you've just lived more. Of course, you could become worse, but you have the potential to become your true self and not let, certain things bug you because you've been through them and you've learned, or like, when you're creating art, it's just like, yeah, I mean, like, that's the thing, right? Is you experience life, then you turn it into art, and the art becomes more specific because you've written 10 scripts and maybe none of them got made, but the fact you did it 10 times means you are probably a better writer than you were on script one. And like, it's just the consistency. It's just willing yourself to finally be able to say like, oh no, I'm a writer. Like the only thing that makes you a writer is if you write. That's it. Doesn't matter if you've been published. You are a writer. You are a filmmaker. Like, you are a writer. And we don't need to, you don't need to be aspiring because you've written. So it's just like, get down that mindset. No one's the cavalry, the cavalry isn't coming, like as Mark Duplass said. But even now, it's like, well, the industry probably isn't coming either. But that doesn't matter because art begs to be released and begs to be, begs to be consumed. So even if like Joe Sony Pictures Classic isn't going to buy your film, it doesn't mean you can't find a creative way to get it viewed. And also, if you change one person's life, boom, you've done your job. Because Lord knows there's plenty of art that'll never be seen other than me or like 15 people at a film festival that's changed mine.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. And just, it's such a simple message that writers write. People try to overcomplicate it, but you
Yeah.
don't need to. And I mean, talking about writing and creating, what are you working on at the moment?
Yes. I've got a couple scripts. One that is like newer and I'm excited about, and another one that's been with me for a couple years and I'm still excited about, just, so one is about a gay couple in purgatory who are told that the only way to get to heaven is to go through couples therapy. And it's like a the purgatory is like a very Jim Henson style world where there's like a magic mirror that's their therapist, and there's a wise old stump, there's a few puppet musical numbers, and it turns like very sinister and dark, and there ends up being like a lot of blood. But I don't want to get too far into the
Goddamn, I want to see
into
this
the weeds.
now.
And the other one, which again I won't spoil because this is a podcast, so like, but like essentially the concept of like nostalgia regression, and about a woman who, after a bunch of things blow up in her life, returns to a World of Warcraft-esque game that she played 20 years ago, and as she connects with the people that she used to play with, she starts being haunted by the final boss in the game, who tries to seduce her and separate her from her real life. So those are kind of the two things that I'm dealing with right now that I'm excited about. And then I've got another few projects, some stuff that I've rewritten, something that I've not written, but like everything's kind of in the sandbox of development. So hopefully soon I'll actually be able to go further towards production. But those are the two original works that I'm currently working on.
Oh my God, they both sound amazing. I'm not even sure which one I want to see more. I want to see them both, and I want to see them now.
Exactly.
Oh, thank you. I'll take that as validation that I should actually continue writing. Okay, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you have any kind of timeline when you might start pitching, or when that might be kind of ready to go?
Yeah, who knows? One is currently in the process of finding financing. The other one is the video game one is a first draft. But like I said, like a stronger first draft, just because of that in my writers group. So, I'm working on the new draft of that right now, and that's the one that I really. I mean, I love the other one too, but that one's like, whichever one goes first. But they're both ready, and I would I would want to make both, and it just depends on who the fuck says yes. And let's hope that soon. But if not, it's not a failure. You move on and you sit down and you write the next thing, and hopefully that's just as cool.
Yeah.
Again, this is what I'm telling myself because I really want to make these, but
right.
We'll see.
Yeah. And last time when we were talking about Touch Me, you mentioned that the shit shower was based on a real event, but you did not elaborate. Now is the time to elaborate.
Yes. Hold on. My cat is biting my shins because she's so annoyed that I'm existing. So we're going to say, hi, Alex. Say hi. You okay?
What an adorable cat.
Yes, I love you too. No, I'm gonna kick you out of the room because I'm tired of you biting me. No, sorry. I let her in because this is where her feeder is, but she
Yeah.
ate the food, and now she's just like, "Well, let me bite you," and I'm like, "Okay." Anyway, yeah, so basically, um, I live in a house. Unbeknownst to me, a bunch of roots in the trees surrounding my house got into the pipes underneath, causing holes that started making a lake of feces under the house. So, um, it kept smelling like utter, every time I took a shower, and I was like, "This is weird." And so, I was like, "Something's wrong." So I took a plunger to the shower drain, and then when I did that, it started overflowing and creating a pool of sewage. And thus is the reason it exists in Touch Me. Sometimes life directly leads to art, and there's just exact copies because it was a literal overflow of shit through the drain that cost me so much money to fix. But it is what it is.
Man, not the one better you.
Oh, I'm sure you can. Listen, yeah.
Mike already
Please one up
knows.
me. Yeah.
Several years ago, I live in an apartment. I lived in a different apartment in the
Yeah.
same complex.
Uh-huh.
We had a winter storm, and I live in Texas, and so having a
Mhm.
winter storm is like, fuck, it's cold.
Yeah.
But it's cold for 3 weeks,
Yeah.
right? It's like this is extremely rare, and so the pipes underneath the apartment complex are from like the 1700s, and so they broke, and my toilet was the exit point for every faucet in the entire building. There were 5 apartments in my
Yeah.
building.
Yeah.
And so it was funny because I can laugh now, but
Oh, yeah.
I left like several voicemails overnight at the management, and I am in the morning. I am emptying out my 20th bucket of water to try to save everything. And the
Yeah.
manager comes in. I have the front door open. The manager comes in and says, "Let me take a look at this little leak. What the fuck?"
Yeah.
And I literally look at this guy and go, "If you're not here to help, you can get the fuck out." And he goes, "What can I do?" And I go, "Think of something." And he was like, "Well, I can break your lease." I'm like, "You're a fucking moron. Where am I going to go?"
Yeah.
I said,
Oh,
I
man.
haven't been apartment hunting until now.
Yeah.
Just a second. He's
Yeah.
like, "I'm going to figure out something. I have your number. I'll call you."
Yeah.
And so he moved me to another apartment. But dude, I mean, I was knocking on doors. Could you please not shit?
Yeah.
Because it's coming up to my toilet. And they're like going, what do you mean? I'm like, your shit is in my apartment. They're like,
Yeah.
"You're crazy." I'm like, "You want to come see?" I had
Yeah.
actually one of them come over and walk in, and she goes, "Oh dear God, you need to call." I'm like, "What do you think I've been fucking doing?"
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. Wow. Yeah. You just had to literally shovel everybody's shit through the one. Oh my God. Yeah. Well, great. Listen.
I know. So
So,
you're telling this story, and I'm like going, "Man, I've been there. I swear
yeah.
to God, I've been there, man."
See,
I
this is what the
swear.
thing, right? You share
I feel
hyper-specific
for you.
stories. Yeah, you share hyper-specific stories, and then people were like, "I have something that's really similar," and then you go, "Whoa, we're not as much of strangers as we think we are. We go through very similar, very specific things sometimes together."
I think yours was a little worse because you had to foot the bill. I mean, and that's
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
fuck
Mhm.
that, man. God damn,
Yeah,
that's
and that's when they
oh.
go. That's the thing, right? And they go like, "Oh, cash only," and you're like, I can't even put this on a credit card. You have to like take a loan or whatever. It is what it is."
Yeah,
But Jesus, yeah, yeah.
yeah. Feel for it.
So yeah. If you ever buy a house, if you ever like live in a house or buy a house that's flipped, know that there are corners that they cut that you won't see for years, and that's just the lay of the land.
Oh God.
Well, if we're going to talk about hyper specific things, it seems really specific how you chose sugar free lemonade powder
Oh,
as the
sure.
thing that could prove fatal to Brian the alien. Is there a story behind why sugar free lemonade powder?
Only in the sense that it was originally Crystal Light, but they wouldn't give us the rights, and so I turned it to sugar-free lemonade powder. Beyond that, it's just for the giggles. The logic behind it is he's essentially allergic to fake sugar, or like aspartame, as it were. But it just sometimes will just like when I'm following the logic of something, I'm like, this is logical. No, I don't. I mean, I couldn't explain you the science why behind a tentacle alien would be allergic to fake sugar, but it's not like people are gonna worry about that. And then, of course, people worry about that. But listen, sometimes there's somebody in this world. There are thousands of planets in the life of obviously aliens exist. Like I'm not. It's not even a conspiracy. I'm not saying they found us. Who knows? But you can't say that we're the only life beings on exist somewhere. There's going to be a civilization. Rule 34. I guess I think that's if it exists, there's porn of it. But the idea of like there is a civilization that is allergic to something so ridiculous that we would find funny. Like there's probably a civilization that's allergic to farts. Like I guarantee you somewhere, somehow, someone's allergic to our specific farts. And you know what? We're going to find them one day and we're going to be like, shit, I guess that weird ass movie was right.
It's going to be the smelliest apocalypse if that planet attacks us.
Yeah, or if we decide to attack them, right? We're gonna instead of a nuclear bomb, we'll just send like everybody fart. Okay, everybody fart. Send it through the mail. We'll collect them together, and then this is a great way to end, by the way. And then we'll shoot off. We'll shoot it off into space and commit. Send all those. I don't imagine what they would look like. I just, probably just like weird frogs, just weird frogs addicted to farts. Maybe this is my next movie. Who knows? I got to write this down. Right, like weird frogs addicted to farts. There's something there.
They could focus it into like a laser beam or something.
Oh yeah, a laser beam of just straight methane. We're cooking now. We're cooking now. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of my favorite creations is Laura, who from the off
Oh yeah,
appears to be more alien than the
yeah.
actual alien Brian. So, I mean, I understand you wrote her specifically for Marlene. So,
Yeah, I did. Yeah. That
yeah.
was less like because like she was like Marlene and more like Marlene has spent her entire career of the past 40 some odd years like crying over some dead body, or like playing somebody's Latina auntie. And obviously she's very good at it, don't get me wrong. But it's like you watch any network show and she's gonna pop up and be crying over something. And she played my mother in Hypochondriac, and that's how I discovered her. I cast her because she was the only one that could have played the role, but she was also like she made every wrong choice in the audition. But that's what I love. Like I didn't need to see her do it perfectly. I just looked at her credits and looked at her performance and go, this is she's right. Which is often what happens with directors. You see and like you can give them notes and we can figure it out, especially if you're close between two people. But there's no point in doing like 5 callbacks unless it's like 800 people have to sign off on it. And so when it came around to this movie, I just wanted to write something fucking fun for her, and that's kind of how the creation of Laura happened. She always talks about that Laura is kind of the Rensfield to Dracula to the monster, and that's who she is. And she's the only one in the movie who wins because she shoves tentacle up her orifice and then turns into this person she's always wanted to be. And so that to me makes just she's and like Marlene loves to give 110% because she's such a theatrical actor. She grew up in theater, and it's just really. She's one of those people. I've collected her. If I like, it's funny, right? Because I'm just like the first part I'm gonna cast you is like some version of my mother that like exists in between the realms of real and not real. And the second one I'm gonna give you is somebody just truly psychotic who can swing samurai swords and masturbate to other people having tentacle sex, and then just like she murdered it. I love and I love that I know that she can do both of those things. She contains the duality of womanhood, I guess, or manhood, whatever it is. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, do you think going forward then we'll be seeing a lot more films where you're casting Marlene?
That's always the goal. Like, I can't always promise that like every movie is going to involve every one of my favorite actors that I've worked with over the time, but you know, when people say yes to me, it means a lot. Especially when um this industry always constantly tries to tell you that you're not important enough for anybody famous to read your script. And then so you have these people on your journey through the filmmaking world, and they say yes to you despite you, like when they said yes to me when I was an untested first feature director. And then they said that like people said yes to me on my second feature, and like I had the South by Southwest stamp, but we didn't have a lot of money to like pay everybody to that for what I was asking them to do. But we had enough to be like, thank you for being here. But like, this isn't going to be like a year's worth of rent. But they said yes to me. And that means a lot to me because these are the people that have said yes because of the art. And I'm not saying the goal isn't to create something in which they can all be supported, because it is. That's the whole idea. And that means a lot to me. So if I can, throughout my career, continue with the people who have been there with me from the very beginning, why wouldn't I? Like, those are the people who I want in my little tower that are killing demons with the bow and arrow. So rise with me. Let's rise together. You know, let's talk about the bullshit, but also have each other's backs. Like, that's art. And that's life. And that's really what I want to continue to do and how I want to move forward in my career.
I love that philosophy. And I wonder, what was it that you learned making Touch Me that improved you as a writer or a filmmaker or even as a human being?
The more specific you are with what you want up front is always going to be better, because you don't I was always afraid of the no. I think I was pretty specific with this one, and that is something I've learned to take on with any other thing. When somebody asks a question and you're going to answer it with the wrong answer, just say the wrong answer, because if they're going to say no, they're not meant to be a part of your project. It doesn't mean they're bad people. It doesn't mean they won't work with you again. But don't be afraid of the no, because the moment you say that like you sacrifice your artistic vision in order to get a yes from someone, means you've already watered down your project. Now, this is, of course, when we're talking about something where somebody else's money is not involved. So if you're making a $20 million movie, I'm nowhere near this. So like, I can say this, but like, if you're at the point, where like, where you have to lie in order to get somebody involved, it just is never going to work well. So be as honest as you can and at the forefront of you can. And that to me is like life, right? Like, I can't always stick to this because I'm human, but like, I'm very much of the mind that like communication is the key to healthy relationships. It's really been tested with me and my boyfriend have been together for 5.5 years now. And that movie about the couple in purgatory was about a before time when we weren't communicating, and we would listen to the shadow parts of our brain, and we would let things fester and blow up. That like just be like not like full blown like full honesty in the sense that you're trying to hurt somebody's feelings, but like you're trying to build trust, and trust can only begin and end with the honest form of creative expression. Invite them into your fold if they're exactly who you're looking for, and you're exactly what they're looking for, and then you can grow together. But that trust is super necessary for them. And that's like just what I've learned. So like the more honest I could be about my art and what I want allows other people to understand what I want and then build on it and make it better.
Yeah, it feels good advice that applies to all areas of life, all facets of art,
I
all
know, it's
relationships.
true. I mean, I find there's always something like that, right? It's like, if you're not a writer, but like you ran a successful something and you want to be a writer, like there's so many like things you could learn from that too. It's like, there's, again, we're so much more alike than we think we are. Everybody thinks we're all so different, but we're not, which is like good. It's not, it's like, you are unique, but you're also, there are things about you that are really just not unique. Like, we all like chicken nuggets, unless you're like the 1.0001% that doesn't like chicken nuggets. But like, that's good, because it means you're human. It means that all humans, most humans, like chicken nuggets. I don't know if that metaphor worked, but I tried to do something cool.
Well, what is the best and the worst writing advice that you have ever been given?
The best writing advice I was given is to almost always use terms that you may use every day in real life and split them up amongst your characters. Not everybody says fuck. Not everybody says just. Not everybody says like. Not everybody says any of these things. And you'll find that it makes they'll make them immediately sound like a lot more like different people. This is an annoying thing, but it's fucking save the cat. But everybody, especially your smaller characters, have the fucking limp in the eye patch. Picks two specific things that they do and stick to it. And you might go too far, right? But you can always walk it back. That's why I always go through and like the I means and the wells and the justs and the O's, remove them. You most likely don't need them. I know we talk like that, but it's a little, but like if everybody says it, they start to sound like the same thing. And the worst advice that I've ever gotten, that is a good. I think it's the most. I think the biggest one is like tone it down. Oh, I remember one. I was writing a play about like it was kind of like a fake documentary, but it was a play about like a gay kid who discovers he can time travel and then dies saving the world. And I had somebody who was going to work with me on it, and he said the one thing you're unrealistic about it is there's just too many gay people in this friend group. There shouldn't be that many gay people. And I went, oh yeah, sure. And I took it as advice, and I was like, what? The point is, like, tell the story you're gonna want you want to tell, and don't like sacrifice it in the sense for palatability. Only like in the specifics of it, because there's something really specific about like a community that has the people that exist there, and don't necessarily remove something just because someone tells you it's not realistic if it is your lived experience. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been a tremendous pleasure chatting with you for the past 2
Yeah.
hours.
Yes.
So,
It's been so lovely. No, I'm glad we got to do this. This is the longest time I've ever actually been able to talk about art at all. So I know I mean I am the guest, so obviously I talked a lot. But it was nice because I've learned so much over the course of my career. Come on. I've had 2 movies. But like I've learned so much about this movie, and I've talked about it in tidbits over the course of my press, but I just love getting to sit down and really delve into like the artistry of it all. And it's been a pleasure. And thank you for giving me the space to actually do that.
yeah, absolutely. And we'll have to do this for the next one
The
because, I mean,
next film, please. Yeah,
yeah,
I would love to. Yeah, I'll see you in 2 to 3 years.
yeah. All right. Well, where can our listeners and viewers connect with you?
Yeah, so I'm most likely Instagram. I'm Addy Bear, ADDYBEAR 5. And then, of course, in America, you can catch Touch Me right now. You could rent it on iTunes and Amazon. It'll be coming to Shudder, I think, in June. And then for those in the UK and Australia, I believe it's May 4th that it gets on online and streaming. And then they're doing a dual Blu-ray of both Hypochondriac and Touch Me, with all of the special features from the American Blu-ray and new special features specific to. I do my own commentary on the UK one that's not available on the American Blu-ray when that comes out. So you can check that out. And then all of my shorts and my web series. So the stuff we talked about here on this podcast, you can watch them as well, all in one beautiful Blu-ray case that I probably will never see any money from because that's how distribution works. But no shade. But yeah, so that's where you can do that. And then I believe it's out in other countries too. I just am not fully aware of it because I'm not. But yeah, those are the places. If you liked the movie, rate it on Letterboxd and IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes. If you didn't, just break your phone and drop it in the toilet, and then maybe somebody else will get that phone and your own shit water as well. But yeah, so that's the end of my pitch for the movie.
All right. Do you have any final thoughts to leave everyone with?
Yeah. Obviously, I give my perspective on my thing, but not everything I say will work for everybody else. The beautiful thing about creativity, art, life is that you pick what works for you and you discard the rest. And that's the thing that I'm always trying to achieve.